Bell's Crusade. A very large proportion of the violent crime in this country is committed by black people against other black people. That is not a very popular thing to talk about in the black communities of America. In Chicago, Gary Reeves found a man who doesn't care how unpopular it is. He wants to see this violence end and is talking about it in public and out loud.
I want everybody to know that today is our big rally against crime.
United will never be defeated. The people, united, will never be defeated.
It's a growing movement in black America, the fight to stop the crime that ravages the nation's inner cities. And when it comes to crime, Chicago is no exception.
28-year-old family man Leroy Hill was shot and killed this morning, becoming a second shooting victim in 2 days.
Caliber bullet only shot through the 18-year-old's right arm.
Police say it was here at the 47th Street Dan Ryan L stop last night where another senseless act of violence took place.
Currently, homicide is a leading cause of death in black males 15 to 44. Right here, right now, 1 out of 21 of you, unfortunately, is going to be killed by homicide. Sitting right here. And you're probably going to be killed by somebody in your family or somebody you know. Those are facts. We tend to kill each other. Drug addiction is a...
If there is a war on against black crime, Dr. Carl Bell fancies himself a general.
There are dangers that you're going to have to face.
But his training is not military, it's medical.
Okay. How are you feeling right now?
I'm in another world.
Are you taking some kind of nerve medication too?
Taking a blue pill for nerves? Here. No? Then, well, it could be that when her temper starts getting real rough.
Carl Bell is a Chicago psychiatrist. He studied at Meharry Medical School in Nashville, Tennessee.
We also need to put you on some medication to help with your temper.
Okay. Victims of violence so dominate his patient load, he has made violence his specialty.
The reason I'm doing this is because there's a need to do it, and I'm a public health-oriented physician who is trained and professionally socialized to deal with public health issues at Meharry. And so if I see that there's a homicide problem in the American society, then I need to reduce that homicide problem, that problem with violence, because then I'll have less work. I have less abused children who are depressed and suicidal and abusing drugs. I'll have fewer problems to deal with up the road if I take care of it at the beginning of the road.
The shooting broke out behind the school gym just after a state playoff basketball game.
2 men were injured here when they were shot by 2 others in a car.
Bell sees violence much the same way Jonas Salk saw polio, as a threatening epidemic that saps the nation's strength.
There have been several years in this country, 1981 being one of them, in which there were more black males killed by other black males in 1981 than all of the black males who died in the 12, 13 years of the Vietnam War.
Bell has responded with a crusade, a campaign called Stop Black on Black Murder.
It is in the best interest of the majority society, if you will, in this country to see to it that African Americans stop doing violence and destruction upon themselves and start developing their own economic initiatives, because it then takes them off the hook for taking care of that group of people, for having to spend the money on the violence, to have to deal with the violence which is going to creep into and is already creeping into their safe suburban societies.
Violence involving children is the central focus of our hearing this morning. In the past, the committee
when a congressional subcommittee chaired by Congressman George Miller held hearings on violence, Carl Bell took his crusade to Capitol Hill.
We did a survey of 536 children in an elementary school in my neighborhood, my catchment area. 26% of these children had seen a shooting, and 29% had seen a stabbing. What I'm saying is, and that what we need to consider, is that a lot of the educational problems and behavioral disturbances that I see in young black children on the south side of Chicago may very well be due to them having been witness to violence and suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, similar to what Vietnam veterans suffer from. When we looked at the mentally ill who had been victimized, we found that they had been victimized repeatedly. For example, 25% of that 1/3 of the women who had been raped, 25% had been raped as children and again as adults. Excuse me if I get a bit angry. I don't like this. Sorry. I deal with this every day, and it gets to be kind of rough.
I come to the agency to seek help for my son because he was sexually molested.
Cases like this are all too common in Bell's inner-city mental health clinic in Chicago.
And I was scared to tell my mom what happened.
So what were you scared was going to happen? You told me that you were scared.
Yep.
And you were scared when he did it. You were scared to tell me. What were you scared of? What did you think was going to happen?
That they was going to put me in jail.
Okay. Well, it's important for you to know you didn't do anything wrong. Okay.
Studies show that today's victims can become tomorrow's criminal offenders. Bell believes counseling can break that cycle.
Not as afraid as you
were. You first have to deal with the scars and the damage that the child has, which means you've got to bring it out in the open. And then you have to take all of that energy and hurt and pain that was generated from having been victim or witness of violence and channel it in a constructive fashion, which means either doing things, which means harnessing that violent energy that everybody has.
Dr. Carl Bell is himself one who managed to harness the negative energy from teen years filled with violence.
I grew up in the streets of Chicago. My brother started a gang. We were in a gang in the west side. We started gangs on the south side. There was a lot of violence going on. I saw somebody get shot.
This is the station for inspiration and information.
This is WVON 1450 AM on your dial. Talk of Chicago.
Now, Bell's unconventional medical practice includes a radio show. Call it an anti-violence outreach program.
I think you were speaking about amount of murders.
You're talking about a lot of homicides.
Homicides.
That's right.
Like just this week, I think, a young man was beaten to death by the police.
Let me just add some information here. For the past 10 years, there have been about 365 police shootings per year that wind up in a death. Each year, there are 10,000 black-on-black homicides, usually between family and friends, that wind up in a death. So I agree with you that we need to protest excessive police violence, but we also need to be doing something about the violence that we're perpetrating amongst ourselves.
I'm calling from the west side of Chicago, and I know the focus this evening has been on rape victims, but my question is...
Dr. Bell has a prescription for change, and he goes from city to city, encouraging groups of community leaders to use the social and health agencies they already have to tackle violence head-on.
So what I would suggest to you that for here at Fort Wayne, what you need to do is you need to start taking some of these policy pieces that I've been talking about and putting them into place. You need to start addressing the gang issue in terms of getting young people jobs, giving them some ethnic relevant supervision, adult supervision, because those kinds of things work.
Carl Bell believes violence can be stopped, but it takes more than counseling and more than expensive social programs. It requires a national will.
There is a risk that going public with the black-on-black homicide issue, that it may reinforce some stereotypes that whites have of blacks, which is why I always emphasize that it appears more to be a poverty issue. I think there's a greater risk not to deal with an issue that blacks are faced with. White people are going to think what they think. You know, I'd like to change some of the craziness that they think. But I think what's more important is that black people need to do some self-help around this issue. Because if we don't, certainly no one else will.
Is Black America ready for this?
I don't care. I mean, it's something that we have got to deal with. I'm tired of dead bodies. I'm tired of victimized children. I don't care whether they're ready for it or not. But I'm going to deal with the issue. Ready or not, here I come.